Thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks to all of you for joining us today here at Code Blue. My name is Mikko, and I hunt hackers. That's my job. That's been my job most of my life. And when I say hackers, I mean the bad hackers, the evil hackers, the criminals, the people who write the malware, who run the botnets, who send the spam. And that's been my job for 27 years now. I joined F-Secure in 1991. And during these 27 years, we've gone through revolutions, technological revolutions. First in the shape of internet becoming commonplace, and right now in the shape of the IoT revolution being underway. Eventually we might even see the third major technological revolution during one lifetime, which would be artificial intelligence. It's going to still take some time for us to see real wide AI, but it might just happen during one lifetime. So internet revolution, IoT revolution, and AI revolution. Now I remember when I set up the first website for F-Secure. It was in April 1994. F-Secure is headquartered in Helsinki, Finland. And I remember that in Finland there were 16 websites before our website. Our website was website number 17. That's how early days it was. But I still remember how obvious it looked that this will become a huge thing. World Wide Web is going to change the world, and that's exactly what happened. And if you remember how it felt like when internet was new, when the web was new, it felt quite different from today. We thought that the internet is going to change the world for the better. We felt that the internet was some kind of utopia. We have this new thing which is going to change the world. Everybody will be there. Anybody can be in contact with anyone else on the planet. One world. No borders, no distances, no geography. Utopia. And as everybody can be in contact with anyone else, this is going to make crises and conflict easier to solve. That's what we thought. It felt like a dream. Unfortunately, in many ways, that dream has now turned into a nightmare. From a dream to a nightmare. As we now know that internet is being used to conduct mass-sized crimes, it's being used to wage war, it's being used to spy on us, and it's being used to do blanket surveillance on citizens all over the world. From a dream to a nightmare. Yes, of course, internet has brought us many benefits, but I don't think anybody saw all these downsides it would bring as well. The fact that internet can easily be used to shape people's opinions. It can be used to change the outcome of elections. And indeed, it's being used by organized crime gangs to make millions and millions with their attacks. From a dream to a nightmare. We fight different kinds of enemies when we are trying to protect our systems. There are criminals trying to make money. There are intelligence agencies trying to spy on companies and countries. There are militaries who are waging war on the internet. But the most common problem indeed is a money-making criminal. And money-making criminals are pretty democratic in their attacks. What I mean by that is that these guys don't really care who you are or where you are as long as they make their money. So for example, if a credit card gang trying to steal credit cards, as long as they are able to steal credit cards, they don't really care if the victim is in Japan or in United States or in Germany. It doesn't matter. They don't care if the credit card is from a private person or it's from a company. It doesn't matter. It's a credit card. So these are very democratic attacks. They target everybody, everywhere. They don't care who you are, which is quite different from targeted attacks, such as espionage attacks, which are very narrowly targeted to specific targets. But criminals have a problem. While it's fairly easy to gain access to large amounts of credit card numbers or large amounts of bank accounts, the problem they have is how to move that money into the real world without getting caught. So in effect, how to convert a large collection of stolen credit cards into a Ferrari without getting caught. And this is surprisingly hard. This is hard because the money conversion and money laundering is the choking point. This is how we can limit the benefits that online criminals are getting from their crimes. It's fairly easy for them to create large amounts of victims and gain access to valuable data, but it's fairly hard for them to get the value out of that without getting caught. It's the choking point, and we should choke these criminals as hard as we can by limiting their access to money laundering systems. Now, we do know some mechanisms that they use to try to move the money to the real world. Let me play you a security camera footage from Spain in an operation run by the Carbanac gang. Take a look at the ATM. Suddenly it spits out money. Pretty nice. I like ATMs like this. This guy is a money mule. His job is to be there and order money from the system. He's using his phone to order more money out of the ATM machine. He even has a bag with him so he can fill it with money. This is how these guys were trying to move their profits from the online world to the real world. But there are limits to how much money you can make like this. How much money is there in one ATM? Maybe a few tens of thousands of dollars or euros. In this case, euros, because this is in Spain. That's a lot of money, but it's no Ferrari. And this is the reason why we are now seeing a very clear trend in the attacks that criminals are making. We are seeing more and more attacks which are targeting these new cryptocurrency-based systems instead of traditional targets. Why is this happening? It's happening because money is now data. Money has become data. And just like real-world criminals love cash, online criminals love Bitcoin and Ethereum and Monero and Zcash and Litecoin and all these different cryptocurrencies. Which of course doesn't mean that these cryptocurrencies would be bad. They're not. Just like cash isn't bad. Most of us have cash in our pockets right now. Exactly the same thing applies to cryptocurrencies. Cash is a tool. Cryptocurrencies are tools. They can be used for good, they can be used for bad. But these benefits that criminals see in cryptocurrencies are very clear for them. So we are now seeing more and more cases where the very same cyber criminals which used to be targeting online banks or online shops are now targeting cryptocurrency exchanges or cryptocurrency wallets. And the reason is that if they gain access to cryptocurrencies, then their profits are already laundered. They're already anonymized. They are already untrackable. So they can go and buy their Ferrari with bitcoins without getting caught. When you look at this from the point of view of the criminals, it makes perfect sense. So we are seeing a trend in which attackers who used to be targeting traditional cybercrime targets are now doing more of the attacks where they target cryptocurrency systems. And for most of us, this is good news. Because most of us work in defending traditional companies. So the more these criminals are moving from targeting traditional companies, such as online stores or banks, into targeting cryptocurrency system, that's better for us. It's bad for you if you are trying to secure a cryptocurrency exchange, but it's good for you if you're not. So the underlying technology in most cryptocurrency systems is blockchain. And blockchain is a public ledger of transactions. That's all it is. Public ledger of transactions. Anything you put in the blockchain is going to be unchangeable forever and public forever. Well, in most blockchains. For example, the Bitcoin blockchain is like this. Anything you put in there is going to be unchangeable and public forever. And blockchain is a real and genuine innovation. Do you know how you can tell that some innovation is a major innovation? You can tell when the innovation is explained to you and it seems obvious, like blockchain, a public ledger of transactions. That's it? Yeah, that's it. That seems pretty obvious. Yes, it does, but it wasn't obvious 10 years ago when it was invented by Satoshi Nakamoto. But one question I get regularly about the public nature of blockchain is that if it indeed is public, how come we can't find the criminals? And that's a great question. Because indeed, every transaction in the Bitcoin blockchain is public. You can go home today and download the whole Bitcoin blockchain. And that one file will contain every single transaction ever done in Bitcoin from the first transaction in 2008. It's all there in one single file. So how hard would it be to follow the movements of money in this blockchain since everything is public? Well, let's take a look. This here visualizes one Bitcoin wallet. The circle at the center of the screen visualizes the address in which victims of the Petya ransomware Trojan were sending their ransoms, the ransom payments. On the 26th of July last year, we saw that the gang behind Petya started moving money from the original wallet. They moved the bitcoins from the original wallet to 6 new wallets. And you can see the size of the transaction visualized by the size of the circle. And this is easy to see. You just download the Bitcoin blockchain and look at transactions. You can see them doing these transactions. So how hard would it be to follow these transactions further until they move the money through an exchange to the real world, to euros or dollars or rubles? Well, this was the 26th of July. On the next day, they moved the money from these 6 wallets to these wallets. And this went on for several days. And then they started moving money from the Bitcoin blockchain to the Monero blockchain. And that's where we lose track. We have no idea where the money went. Online criminals love cryptocurrencies, just like real-world criminals love cash, because they're anonymous, they're untrackable, easy to launder. And this is the reason why we've seen this massive amount of ransomware Trojans. Here's our roadmap for ransomware Trojan families, and the roadmap has become so large it doesn't even fit on a single slide anymore. We are tracking hundreds of different ransomware Trojans out there, and more are being generated all the time. Cryptocurrencies are the explanation for this explosion. We had ransomware Trojans before Bitcoin, but they never became a big problem. Now they are a massive problem. We're also seeing a lot of scams where online scammers are trying to fool people to lose their cryptocurrencies. For example, scams where they pose as celebrities like Elon Musk. Here Elon Musk is giving away free money. Free Ethereum, just send him a tiny amount of money and he will send you back 10 times more. And of course he won't, because that's not Elon Musk. If you look at the Twitter handle, that's Elon Musk with 3 L's. So does anybody fall for this? Well, the transactions are public. We can look at the Ethereum address in the Ethereum blockchain, and in this case that address has received 283 Ether, which translates to $200,000 US. So yeah, people do fall for this. And different people are being used to send these scam messages, typically on Twitter. I've been used. Here's a tweet which I didn't send, in which I'm giving away free Bitcoin, free Ethereum, and free Litecoin. 1,000 Bitcoins, that's a lot of money. That's around $6 million. 15,000 Ethereum, that's roughly the same. And no, that's not me, because my Twitter handle is not Ravari43. And then we see regularly actual thefts, especially thefts targeting cryptocurrency wallets or cryptocurrency exchanges. All these cryptocurrency exchanges have been hacked. And this makes a lot of sense from the attacker's point of view. When attackers want to make a lot of money, they have to target an organization which has a lot of money. For example, a bank. Banks have billions. If you can break into a bank, you can steal billions. But it's hard to break into a bank. Why? Because banks have been around for decades or even hundreds of years. They have thousands or tens of thousands of employees. Their security team has dozens of people. They've been doing security for decades. It's a hard target. However, these exchanges, many of them control billions of dollars. It seems crazy, but it's true. The amount of cryptocurrencies they have in their accounts can translate to billions of US dollars. But these companies have not been around for decades. They do not have thousands of employees. They don't have dozens of security people. These are startups. The whole company might have 20 people. This is an easy target when you compare it to a bank, but the amount of money you can steal is roughly the same as hacking into a bank. This is why exchanges are being targeted. And such attacks, where exchanges are being targeted, are not only done by criminals. In some cases, they are being done by governments. Especially North Korea has a track record of trying to break into cryptocurrency exchanges to steal cryptocurrencies. North Korea was also behind the WannaCry attack from 2017. And that's highly, highly unusual. highly unusual to see that a government would be willing to go so low that they are ready to steal from others. It seems incredible that there is a country on this planet which is willing to create and deploy ransomware Trojans to try to fix their budget deficit. But that's what we've seen. And this makes the attacks that we've seen from North Korea unique. When you look at governmental attacks in general, they're almost always either spying or waging war. The only exception is North Korea. North Korea is the only country which has been using governmental attacks to steal money. So it's typically spying or waging war. We often see the word cyber war being used in headlines when governments are doing attacks against each other. And almost always when you read the word cyber war from a newspaper, it actually isn't cyber war. Because the most typical attacks that governments do are done by their intelligence agencies to do espionage or spying. And espionage isn't war. Spying isn't war. Espionage is espionage. Spying is spying. And if something isn't war, we shouldn't be calling it war. Because words matter. And we need the word cyber war for real cyber war. Now, I don't believe that we will ever see a cyber war between two countries where all the fighting would only be done in cyberspace or in the online world. Because from my point of view, cyber is just another domain for war. If you look at the kind of wars we were fighting 500 years ago, we only had land war, because the only weapons we had were like swords and bow and arrow. But eventually we had good enough boats that we could expand the war from land to sea. So we got sea war. But the invention of sea war didn't take away land war. We were now fighting wars on both land and sea. Then we got planes, air war. Then we got satellites, space war, and now cyberspace war. So these are new domains. And when there is a conflict or war between two countries, it's typically being fought in all of these domains. Exactly in the same manner, spying is expanding to new domains. Cyber domain. Spying is collecting information. And information has changed. Information used to be something like this. It used to be physical. So if you want to steal this information, you have to come to this information to steal this piece of paper or to copy this piece of paper. And as you know, today, information is virtual. Information is on our computers, it's in our networks. And you don't have to go anywhere to steal that information. So a couple of years ago, I was giving an interview for a newspaper about cyber spying. And the quote I gave to the journalist was that spying has moved from the real world to the online world. And this is what they printed in the newspaper. Mikko Hypponen says that spying has moved from the real world to the online world. The next day, my phone rings. A friend of mine who works at an intelligence agency calls me up. And he tells me that, you know, Mikko, you're wrong. Spying has not moved from the real world to the online world. Spying has expanded from the real world to the online world. The real world spies haven't gone anywhere. They're still there. They're still doing their work in the real world. But now there's new kind of spying happening in the online world. And I totally believe him, because at F-Secure we track things happening on the internet. We have no idea what real-world spies are doing. We don't follow that stuff. So to us, it looked like spying had moved from the real world to the online world, when in reality it had only expanded to the online world. So what would be an example of a conflict or war between two countries which would be fought in all of these domains? Land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace. Well, for example, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine have been at war for 5 years now. During that war, we've seen multiple cyber attacks done with cyber weapons from Russia targeting Ukraine. And it's no wonder that governments, and especially militaries, are interested in offensive use of cyber power. This is no surprise. Governments love cyber weapons. Why? Because cyber weapons are effective, affordable, and deniable. Effective, affordable, deniable. That's a pretty good combination in a weapon. When you have a weapon which is effective, it gets the job done, it's affordable, it's cheap, and it's deniable. You can deny that it wasn't you. And especially the deniability part is very strong in cyber attacks. When you do a real world attack, like sending a fighter jets to another country, it's kind of hard to deny. But when you do the same thing with a cyber attack, you can keep denying it forever. A great example is Stuxnet from 2010. The Stuxnet case is very well known. We all know who did it. It was the governments of the United States and Israel targeting the nuclear enrichment systems of Iran. However, governments of the United States and Israel are still denying this. They're still denying that they're behind it. And we can't prove it because cyber weapons are deniable. So we got a good example of real-world usage of a cyber weapon in a cyber war last summer of 2017, with the Petya or not Petya attack. This was a cyber weapon which claimed to be a ransomware Trojan. It wasn't. It was a destructive Trojan which was designed to halt the society of one country, Ukraine. It looked like a ransomware Trojan, but it wasn't. Even if you paid the ransom, you wouldn't get your files back. So how were the Russians targeting one country? How was the targeting done? Well, to target just Ukraine, they used an attack against the Ukrainian software company. The Russians hacked into a company manufacturing this piece of software, a bookkeeping software called MEDoc. The software is made by a company in Kyiv, in Ukraine, the capital of Ukraine, and this software is only used in Ukraine. It only runs in Ukrainian language. It can be used to do bookkeeping, and very importantly, it can be used to file taxes to the Ukrainian government. This is the de facto way how Ukrainian companies file their taxes every year to the Ukrainian tax authorities. All Ukrainian companies run this. So the Russian attackers hacked into this company, and they hacked their update servers. And then on the 29th of June 2017, they sent out an extra update to every customer. And that update was Petya. If you were running ME-DOC on the 29th of June, you got infected. And once one machine was infected in your network, then Petya started stealing access tokens and credentials to spread further in the network. And in many cases, it gained access to admin credentials, even domain admin credentials, meaning it spreads like wildfire. The end results in Ukraine were devastating. Majority of Ukrainian companies were hit. They lost massive amounts of data. The whole society suffered. However, this is not the story we heard in the summer of 2017. Instead, we heard a story about Western companies fighting Petya all over the world. Companies from Europe, companies from North America, from South America, from Asia. And these companies had nothing to do with Ukraine. Construction material companies, food companies, or companies like Maersk, which ships containers all over the world. This company is from Denmark. It has nothing to do with Ukraine. Why did Maersk get hit? Well, even though this company has nothing to do with Ukraine, they do business in Ukraine. Every fifth container on the planet is shipped by this company, many of them being shipped to Ukraine, which means this company has to file taxes in Ukraine. And if you have to file taxes, the way you do it is by running ME-DOC. So on the 29th of June, Maersk got an internal infection into their network through the ME-DOC update. The infection spread like wildfire and overwrote 40,000 laptops. 40,000 laptops. But that's not the worst part. It also overwrote 4,000 servers. And the problem when you lose 4,000 servers instantly is that this is hard to fix because those servers are in data centers around the world. And once they get infected by Petya, those machines are no longer running Windows. Now they are running Petya, which means you can't remotely fix them. You can't remotely manage them anymore. You have to physically go on location. So during the Petya outbreak, many companies were sending consultants on planes to data centers around the world, carrying Windows boot CD-ROMs in their backpacks to go and rebuild servers from scratch. But that's not the worst part either. In addition of losing 40,000 workstations and 4,000 servers, they also lost their ADs, their Active Directory servers. This company had 151 AD servers all over the world. AD servers contain the user information, usernames, logins, passwords, credentials, and the authorization info. What kind of rights does this user have? This company had 151 ADs all over the world, and they did not have a backup of this data. I mean, why would you need a backup? You already have 151 backups. These servers are constantly synchronizing the information with each other. And certainly you're not going to lose all 151 ADs at the same time. Except that's exactly what happened. When Petya started spreading, it overwrote all of their ADs. And now they no longer had a network. Even if you would rebuild a laptop, that laptop would have no network that it could log into, because there was no network anymore, since all ADs were lost. Although, when they started investigating the case, they realized that they had 151 ADs, and of those, they could confirm that 150 were overwritten. And then there was one AD that they couldn't find. Eventually, they figured it out. The missing AD was in Africa, in Ghana. Turns out that the data center in Ghana had a power outage during the Petya outbreak. So then they made a very careful phone call to Ghana, Africa, telling the IT staff there not to plug in the server. And then they sent someone physically to go and collect it. This is how they rebuilt their network. They got lucky. So what was the mistake? What was the mistake that these companies made? They had to run this software. There was no option. If you want to do business in Ukraine, you have to file taxes in Ukraine. If you want to file taxes in Ukraine, you have to run this software. The default setting in the software was automatic updates enabled. And if these companies would have come to me before Petya and asked my opinion that is this a good idea? Is it a good idea to leave the default setting of automatic updates enabled? I would have told them yes. Because this is what we have been telling companies for 10 years. Patch your systems, update your systems. Automatic updates will give you better security. Well, in this case, it was the updates which burned these companies. Nobody expects to get hacked just because they run a bookkeeping software. So were these Western companies just collateral damage? Was this an accident that the attack, which was trying to target only Ukraine, also created massive problems outside of Ukraine? The size of this problem is huge. I believe that Petya was the single most expensive computer security incident in history. I believe this cost more money than anything, more money than any other malware outbreak, more money than any hack ever, more money than any data leak ever. And this happened last year. So maybe these companies outside of Ukraine were just collateral damage. Or maybe the Russians were trying to send a message. And the message is, don't do business in Ukraine. If you do business in Ukraine, we will hurt you. We don't know which one it is. Nobody expects to get hacked because they run bookkeeping software. Nobody expects to have a data breach. But this is what we should be expecting. And right now it takes an awfully long time for companies to detect that they have a breach, unless the breach is something drastic like Petya, which you of course will notice right away. We know this because we run incident response teams at F-Secure. And whenever we get a phone call to our incident response team, it's almost always somebody who's calling and is having a panic attack. Like, we were just hacked. Can you come right away? And our guys rush over, start investigating the hack, only to realize that yes, the company was hacked, but it was hacked last year. They only noticed it now, but they were hacked last year, and there was no urgency. Our guys could have come next week, and it would have been exactly the same. On average, it takes 200 days for companies to realize that they've had a breach. Two months ago, we heard about the Ticketmaster breach, in which 40,000 people lost their credit card numbers as they were buying tickets to different events from Ticketmaster.com. How did this happen? Well, it happened because Ticketmaster had installed a chatbot on every page on their website. You know, these chat windows that pop up from the right corner of the browser when you go to a website, where there's some helpful individual asking that, how can I help you? Well, That pop-up window is effectively a couple of lines of JavaScript. In this case, this service was actually purchased from a third-party company, a company called Inventa. Then Inventa got hacked, and the attackers changed the JavaScript, which was loaded on every page of Ticketmaster. And when I say every page, I mean every page, including the pages where users check out their tickets and including the pages where customers type in their credit card numbers. So now the JavaScript was reprogrammed to steal the credit card numbers as users were typing it in. Nobody expects to get hacked because of a chatbot. Or if we look at one of the largest credit card thefts in history, 5 years ago we saw the case with Target, one of the largest retail chains in the United States. They didn't lose 40,000 credit cards, they lost 40 million credit cards. 40 million credit card numbers which were stolen over months and months as customers were paying for their purchases at the cashier desks in Target shops. They lost their credit card number because the credit card terminals had been modified by an attacker. How did the attacker get in? Well, the attackers got in through the ventilation system. And when I say ventilation, I don't mean Tom Cruise or Bruce Willis crawling in through the ventilation pipes. What I mean is that the attackers hacked the computers running the ventilation and refrigeration systems used by Target. Because ventilation systems today in every building are being controlled by ICS boxes, industrial control system, effectively Linux servers, which don't look like Linux servers. Once the attackers got into the ventilation computers, they were able to move from there to the core routing network of Target, from there to the financial network, and from there to the credit card terminals. Nobody expects to get hacked through the ventilation systems. But this is what happened. And the larger your network, the harder it is to keep attackers out. How many of the Fortune 500 companies are hacked right now? Answer, 500. Every single one of them. Why? Well, if you are a Fortune 500 company, you have at least 100,000 workstations. And if you have 100,000 workstations, you have a breach. Guaranteed. Somewhere in the network. It might be something small. It might be a single infected laptop in an airport lounge, but that's a breach. So the larger your network, the more likely it is that you have a breach right now. And it's no longer enough to only protect our computers. I'm a computer security guy. I've been a computer security guy all my life. And I used to think that my job is to secure computers. I'm a computer security guy. I secure computers. Well, you know what? Everything is becoming a computer. Our societies run on computers. Lights are on in this room thanks to computers. The breakfast you had was most likely at least partially made in a food processing plant, which is being run by computers. So when you work in computer security, your job is not to secure computers. Your job is to secure the society. Our job is to secure the society because the whole society, our societies, run on computers. And that's a pretty big responsibility to be put on a bunch of geeks and nerds like us. But that's what we got. That's what we have to do. And we are seeing more and more attacks which are targeting these new kinds of devices. Devices like that. Over the last 5 years, we've found an ever-increasing number of botnets which only infect things that are not computers. These botnets don't infect computers at all. They only infect connected devices or IoT devices. Probably the most famous of them is Mirai from late 2016. Mirai, which, as you know, is Japanese, means the future. This is the future of malware as well. Malware which is no longer infecting computers. And I remember when Mirai was going around, when the first Mirai outbreak started, the botnet was used to launch a massively large denial of service attack against the second largest domain name service provider on the planet, effectively hurting the whole internet. Internet didn't work very well on the first days of the Mirai outbreak. So we were scanning the internet, trying to figure out where all the infected machines were and what the machines were, because they were not computers. Some of them were kitchen appliances, many of them were security cameras. And I remember I called this one law firm that we fingerprinted as having an attack coming from their network. I actually called them up on the phone. Hello, this is Mikko. Nice to meet you. Do you have a Mitsubishi heat pump installed in your office? Yes, we do. It's right there on the wall. Is it working? Yep, it's working fine. We believe that your heat pump is infected by a bot, and your heat pump is right now launching an attack against the second largest name service provider on the internet. Do you know what he answered? He said, uh-huh. And then he said, oh yeah? Cool. He thought it was cool that their heat pump was part of a global botnet. So Mirai was not the wake-up call that we needed for people to start to pay attention to IoT security. People are not too worried about their connected devices. And this is because they think about the wrong problem. So for example, if somebody buys a smart refrigerator in their kitchen, a refrigerator which is on the internet, which means when they are shopping, they can actually look inside their fridge and see what's missing. And they're not worried about those getting hacked, because it's a fridge. Yes, I have an internet-connected fridge. I don't care if somebody hacks it. It's just a fridge. Well, the attackers out there are not going to hack your fridge to gain access to your fridge. They're hacking your fridge to gain access to the network behind the fridge. IoT devices in most networks are the weakest link in the network. This applies both to homes and to companies. They go through the weakest link, which is an IoT device, to gain access to the network behind the device. This means that one day you might wake up to realize that every single computer in your home has been encrypted by a ransom Trojan, and the attackers got in through your smart doorbell. This would be the wake-up call that would make people pay attention on IoT security. But that hasn't happened yet. We haven't seen the real wake-up call yet. And the problem with IoT security is that, especially for home appliances, price is the most important selling point. When you go shopping for a washing machine, you're looking at price. You're not looking at security features. You're not asking questions about what kind of a firewall does this washing machine have. No, you're asking about price. And if that's true, that means that vendors creating these new smart devices can't afford to invest in security. Because if they invest in security, The only thing it does is that it makes their product more expensive than competitors' products. And the features they get are features that nobody's asking for. They're sort of automatically creating an environment where IoT security sucks. And IoT security does suck. Do you know how Mirai was spreading? It was spreading over Telnet. You heard me right. Telnet. Nobody uses Telnet. We've stopped using Telnet in our computers 20 years ago. Why? Because Telnet is horribly insecure. But for some reason, apparently we have to go back and repeat the same mistakes that we already fixed in our computers. These new IoT devices are repeating the mistakes that we already fixed. And this matters because today all companies are software companies. Every company is a software company. Your company is a software company. It doesn't matter what you do. You're a software company anyway. Because today the difference between successful and unsuccessful companies is how good the company is in digitalization. Every company is a software company. For example, car companies. Car companies are software companies. Because what are cars? Cars are data centers on four wheels. That's what they are. And for years and years, we've been teaching companies to secure their network like they would be building a safe. When you're building a safe, you put in really thick walls and thick door and a good lock, and you try to keep everybody out all the time. This is what we were preaching. Secure your network like you would be building a safe. Put a strong firewall. Put some proxies in there. Put some filters. Put some intrusion prevention mechanisms. Try to keep everybody out all the time. And if you build a safe like this, if you build a safe with thick doors, thick walls, and a good lock, then you don't need a motion detector inside the safe. Like, why would you put a motion detector inside the safe? Nobody's going to be getting in. You don't need a motion detector inside the safe. But what if the attacker figures out a way to get in that you didn't think about? Like, I don't know, coming in through the ceiling. In that case, it actually would be very, very nice to have a motion detector inside the safe, even though you think you'll never need it. So you have to assume that your safeguards will fail. And nobody likes to do that. Nobody likes to assume a failure. But that's exactly what we should be doing. We should be assuming breach. In the network environment, the motion detectors inside your network would be building a picture with sensors on what's your network looking like and what does normal traffic look like in your network. And then when you know what normal looks like, then you can start looking for things that are abnormal. And these kind of solutions work. I know, because we have solutions like this. It's slow work in the beginning. We would deploy sensors across the network of a client. Initially, we wouldn't be able to do anything useful. We would just collect information. But after a couple of weeks, we have a picture of what normal looks like. It doesn't always work, though. We had one client recently where we detected something that we were that we were convinced ourselves that now the company had been hacked. Because what we saw was that one workstation suddenly woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning and started sending gigabytes of data to a static IP address in mainland China. So we called up the company and we reported that we believe you've been breached. And they investigated the case, and then they called us back 2 days later. And they told us that we were wrong. This was a false alarm. There was no breach. They weren't hacked. Instead, what had happened was that they had one employee working on a project for a Chinese client who had come to work at 4 a.m. in the morning to finish the project and was uploading drawings to a server in China. No breach, no hack, false alarm. However, the client was still kind of happy. He liked the fact that we were able to tell that thing was happening, even though it wasn't a breach. It proved to them that the system works and is able to detect the things that are abnormal. So we've gone from a dream to a nightmare. The internet, the utopia that we were given 25 years ago, has been turned into a tool for organized crime, for spies, and for waging war. It has been used to shape people's opinions and to change the outcome of elections. From dream to a nightmare. And this is the reason why we have to be doing a better job in securing our networks. We have to be able to do better security engineering. We have to be able to react faster to new threats. We have to be able to secure our own networks and our client networks. We have a responsibility to do that. Because we all were given a free and open internet. That's what we got. And the question is, what kind of an internet will we be leaving behind? What kind of an internet will we be giving to our children? What kind of an internet are we leaving behind? What kind of an internet are you leaving behind? Thank you very much.